So, what do our two Senate candidates think about war? That is a broad, big question. So, here's how I decided to look into this. First, I listed out the wars or military things, the major ones that we've been involved in since the year 2000. Y2K! Turns out we've been involved in a lot of things, some larger than others, of course. And then the second thing I did is I looked at what Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted voted for or said in regards to those wars or military things. So this is a picture of the world, obviously, with the wars and military things since 2000 circled that I looked into. We've got Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Venezuela, Ukraine, Russia. So one caveat/problem, Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted have not ever been in the same position of power at the same time. So, for example, they were not both senators at the same time. So we can't directly compare how they voted on the exact same things in Senate. But what we can look at is what they voted for or against if they were in a position of power. And if they weren't in a position to vote, what were they saying about it? What was their opinion? And so that is how we're going to look at this. Okay, here are the wars and military things on a timeline from 2000 through now, 2026. I have indicated who was president when these things started, as the president has a significant role in determining what military conflicts to involve us in. So we have Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021. George W. Bush, was president when that started. So this was started after 9/11, and it was started in an effort to respond to Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden and see if we can't dismantle that because 9/11 was awful. Iraq was 2003 to 2011. That was another George W. Bush. This one was started, if you remember, or if you weren't alive, maybe you learned in school. This was weapons of mass destruction. So what was his name? Colin Powell. I remember him showing us all these different images and showing Congress of where stocks of weapons of mass destruction are, and we need to go into Iraq and stop this stuff. It's notable, and I think it's important to say, those weapons of mass destruction turned out to be false. That was not real. They did not exist. Okay. So we have in 2022, under Joe Biden, Ukraine-Russia war started. Notable here is that this is a war between Russia and Ukraine, so we are not directly involved. However, we have sent over lots of weapons, how to use weapons, training for weapons, information, aid, support to Ukraine. Okay. In 2026, under President Donald Trump, we have Venezuela. You'll see the arrow on the right. I mean, there's no arrow on the right because that started and is seemingly over. And I'm not actually sure why we did that. We got the guy in charge out of power, and they do have oil, but it's not really usable. Okay. And then we have Iran is happening right now, and that is started in 2026 under President Trump. And we have the arrow going to the right because we don't know how long it'll go on. And this was started because nuclear weapons, nuclear weapons, Iran. You know, if you look up the 1980s and the 1990s, us being concerned about Iran and nuclear weapon development has been ongoing for so long. Lots of different agreements have been had and broken, and bleh. You can look all that up. Okay, so that is where we are, and I apologize for my somewhat halting speech, because as I'm speaking, I'm realizing that sometimes I do not know what we are doing in some of these foreign countries. Okay. So I've condensed all that down to the bottom now, right? So you can still see all those countries, smaller lines, but there's all of our military war-like involvements. And so sometimes nowadays when you hear people talk about endless wars in the Middle East, wars that never end, sending our boys and girls to go be killed in the desert, they're talking not just from 2000 until now, but back decades before that. Like we've really been over there a lot. So here we go. At the bottom, you can see I've color-coded our wars. So Afghanistan is red, Iraq is orange, Ukraine, Russia, yellow, Iran is green, and Venezuela is blue. And then I've got our two boys, Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted. Starting with Sherrod Brown. So the Iraq War, so remember that's the weapons of mass destruction. We have to go get those. He voted no for that. He said, no, I don't think there are weapons of mass destruction. I think this is garbage, essentially. And he said no. Okay. And that is turned out to be correct. There were not weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Okay. So Afghanistan. So he was a yes to go into Afghanistan as an initial response to 9/11 and to fight al-Qaeda because, I repeat, 9/11 was horrible. Okay. Kind of in the middle of Afghanistan, I have a no because his opinion, if you will, shifted because at some point now we were nation building in Afghanistan and the war was becoming very prolonged. People were sent to multiple tours of duty more than they should have, it sounds like. And, you're just, more people are dying every day. And it's like, what are we still doing here? And then a little bit later at the end of the Afghanistan line, he was a no to us still being there, and also then a no to how that withdrawal happened. So again, that withdrawal was under Joe Biden, and it was perhaps not done very seamlessly. Okay. Okay, next in yellow, so Ukraine, Russia. So just if you recall, Russia and Ukraine have been arguing over some different pieces of land along their borderish regions for some time. It's another one of those things, look it up. It's been going on forever. And anyways, Russia invaded Ukraine. And so Sherrod Brown was a yes. We are going to be involved with helping Ukraine. Not with boots on the ground, but with weapons and money and aid. Okay, Venezuela in blue, Sherrod Brown was a hard no on that. And Iran in green, Sherrod Brown is a hard no on that. All right, moving over to Jon Husted. The Iraq War, so he wasn't in the Senate at this time, but I could look up what he thought at the time. And he was a yes to going into Iraq. So again, this is the weapons of mass destruction. That was not true. And he was a yes to going in there. And then, as you can see, around the middle of Iraq to the end of Iraq, he shifted to a no because when the weapons of mass destruction, which is that WMD, when those were found not to exist, he was like, well, then what are we still doing there? And this is very prolonged. What are we doing? Okay, so he was a yes and then a no. Afghanistan, his view, as far as I can tell, seemed to mirror Sherrod Brown's view reasonably well. He was a yes that we should initially go into Afghanistan in response to 9/11, to respond to al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. Again, 9/11 was awful. And then somewhere later, just like with Sherrod Brown, Jon Husted flipped to a no because now we're just trying to nation build and this war is prolonged. What are we doing? And then at the end of Afghanistan, just like Sherrod Brown, the no is like, why are we still there? But then also this withdrawal is not going well. Ukraine, Russia. Jon Husted seems to be in agreement with Sherrod Brown just on, yes, we are going to help out Ukraine with weapons and money and aid. And so Venezuela in blue there, Jon Husted was a yes to that. And then Iran in green, let me explain what all that is. I've got yes, 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 yes. He has voted yes to the Iran stuff multiple times. There's been lots of votes about that for money, appropriations, military stuff. And he has voted yes somewhere between 5 and 7 times. And then there was a single no vote as well. Whoopsie doopsie. I almost finished this video and forgot about one other situation I had wanted to look into, which was Greenland. So I have slipped that in here in purple down at the bottom, and I have down at the bottom Greenland is somewhere around 2019 to 2025, a little wiggly. Donald Trump first mentioned Greenland, as far as I can see, in 2019, but really started amping up talking about taking Greenland around 2025, and taking meaning like military, aggressive, it'll be the 51st state, that kind of stuff. As far as I can see, Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted are both no's on taking Greenland aggressively, like with the military, or making it our 51st state. And they both seem to be in favor of keeping Greenland as it is now, which is an ally. I have included this in here as just a final little tidbit because usually when people think about war, they also, if they are sane, then think about peace and how we might get to peace and stop killing people. And so Sherrod Brown is, as I understand it, seems to have the view of diplomacy and strong sanctions. So diplomacy being the first thing, which is, hey, maybe we can talk and work out a plan or a deal or a something, a compromise, if you will, before we just start like shooting people and stuff. And then sometimes, actually often diplomacy works, believe it or not. But when it doesn't work, then he's a fan of strong sanctions. Our world is very interconnected now. And so strong being the key word here of sanctions. If the world sort of cuts off a country from the rest of the world, that is pretty effective at getting them to change their viewpoint. So Jon Husted, I have a direct quote here that seems to align more with what he thinks, which is peace through strength. And this would be, let's keep building our military bigger and better and stronger and more military innovation and such. And we will then stand here with our giant muscles and guns, and this will scare countries into peace. Something like that. I am going to leave you in the video description with some helpful links to the websites of Sherrod Brown and Jon Husted. I will give you a couple links to some information about some of these military conflicts and wars and stuff, though I trust you can look them up if you're more interested yourself. I also am going to have all the Ohio voter information that you might need, including how to register to vote, if you're actually registered to vote, when you have to register by, and then also mail-in voting dates, early voting dates, and then actual election day voting dates and stuff. And also through these links, at some point becomes available what your individual ballot will look like. Because sometimes in our local communities, we have local referenda, whatever, and stuff like that. So you can see what your actual ballot will look like, and I always like that because then I feel like I'm going in prepared. Okay. Oh, and you know what? At the bottom in the description, 2 songs pop into my mind immediately every time I think or hear about war. So I've given you links to those 2 songs just because I can do that. So I did.